really struck right near the beginning of that song. We sang the line, "You pledge yourself to me." And I was reminded of a verse that Lydia shared, I think, at evening worship last week I think it's in 1 John, where it says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." And just be encouraged this morning, however you're feeling, wherever you're at, he chose you before you did anything. Jesus chose to go to the cross for you. He chose to give his life for you. Whether you choose to receive that or not, that's your call, but he chose you first. You belong to him. That's his choice. Let's just be encouraged in that again, church, that Jesus, your love for us is so great that but beyond what we could ever have asked or even imagined you doing, you chose to live and die for us. You chose to say, I am your God, I am your Father, without us even asking. How incomprehensible to us is that kind of love. Thank you, Father God. Amen. 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 Isn't it awesome hearing the young people downstairs getting stuck in, having a great time? Cool. Okay, we're going to get straight into our message for this morning then. And if you've been following us, you'll know that we're shaping all of our teaching for this term right up until the school summer holidays around a resource called Practicing the Way. And we've offered it in some of the small groups on a Wednesday evening. Who's coming along to Practicing the Way on a Wednesday evening and doing the full course? Are we enjoying it so far? Yeah? Really great resource there. But so the first couple of sermons that we've done this term were sort of tasters of the overall course. And that was just to give us sort of the introduction to this idea of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, that it's not simply choosing to believe something or attending a church, but that it is about following Jesus with our whole life, with that goal of being with Jesus, becoming like him, and doing what he does. And this idea that as we're with Jesus over time, we are becoming transformed to be like him. Last time I spoke, not Craft Church Week, but the week before, we looked at the things that shape us, and we talked about how we can replace the stories that we believe about how the world is with truth from God's word. We can replace the concept of relationships that shape us with being deliberate about community. And that the habits that we have, the unintentional habits that we just do without thinking, we can replace with deliberate practices in order to shape ourselves to be like Jesus. And so where we're going now for the rest of the term is we're zooming in on practices. We're going to dip into each week different practices that were either modeled by Jesus or taught by Jesus that can equip us and help us to become like him, to be transformed, to be more like Jesus. Now, there's a really important thing that we need to remember before we jump into this, and that's that doing these practices does not earn us favor with God. Doing these practices do not get us brownie points in heaven, okay? We are loved, as we've heard coming through in the message this morning, we are loved by God, whatever. He loves us. He has died for us. We are forgiven. Our place with him in eternity is secure. Done. What we do from this point onwards makes no difference to that. Okay? So thinking about these habits, they are useful tools to help us become more like him, which is our goal, but they're not what earns our salvation. That's already done. We are already loved by God. So it's important we remember that as we come to this. And that these practices that we're going to look at equally, they are not rules you have to follow. If you are a follower of Jesus, you must do this, and you must do that, and you must do the other. And so, having said that they are not rules, they're not things that earn our salvation, they're not things that we have to do, we're going to go to the Ten Commandments this morning. And I'm going to suggest something provocative to you. Are you ready to have your feathers ruffled? Because I think that there is one of the 10 Commandments that actually most of us probably don't bother with. In fact, I might go so far as to say that there's one of the 10 Commandments that we all break, but it's one of those ones where you go, yeah, but that's just life, isn't it? And well, yeah, of course, you don't keep that one. I mean, come on, who does? Or maybe even we could go so far as to say there's one of the 10 Commandments that in our society, breaking that commandment is almost something that people are proud of. That it's almost a badge of honor, that there's a respect for people who break it. Are you feeling provoked? Are you feeling ruffled? So many to choose from, Lydia. The commandment I'm talking about is Sabbath. Sabbath. One of the 10 Commandments, and yet, do we stop work on Sabbath? Do we keep it holy? Can you see what I mean? It's one of those things you talk to people. You ask each other, if I said to any of you this morning as you came in, how's your week been? How many of you would have said, oh, busy? Anybody? Yeah? It's busy. Our life is busy. I haven't had time to stop. How many of you have said that in the last week? I just haven't had time to stop. You've been decorating. It's a hard life, isn't it? And there's almost an admiration. The busier someone is in life, the more respect they somehow have. Do you know what I mean? There is kind of a busier, doing more equals a better person. Do you hear what I'm getting at? And in fact, I would suggest to you, feel free to be offended by this one as well, that I feel the biggest obstacle to people becoming more Christ-like, to our discipleship, to our journey of faith, the biggest obstacle, I think, is busyness. Just stop and think for a minute. How many of you have an intention to spend time in prayer every day, but it's one day this week you didn't get round to it because you were too busy? How many of you intend to read God's word every day, but at some point this week you dropped it because you were too busy? Or any of those other habits, attending small group, getting a bit difficult there, aren't we? Or turning up to church on Sunday. How often do we drop those things because we're too busy or we're too tired? And yet, I'm sure that most of us in this room will be familiar with this verse. Jesus speaks to us and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." That's what Jesus calls us to. Are we living that? Are we living with an easy yoke? Now, the crazy thing in this is that I would say it's the commandment that we're least likely to follow, but it's probably the one that we'd most like to follow. With me? So much of what our world aims for. You look in the adverts, everything that's publicized to you. What is the goal in life? It is to achieve rest and comfort. And God commands us to do that. And it's the one thing that we don't do. It's crazy, isn't it? So having done that little preamble, I think we need to actually read the 10 Commandments, don't you? Just to refresh our memory. So Judy is going to come up and read to us. So this is Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 17. If anyone finds it in the church Bibles, shout out the page number to help the rest of us find it. We'll give them a moment to find it.
I will. 78.
Say again?
78.
78.
Page 78.
20. Wow, that's very early on. Okay, fine.
I'm sorry, I have other things
Go
on my
for it.
mind
Right,
this
okay,
morning.
let's hear it then. Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 17.
Okay. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven, above or in the earth beneath or in the waters below, and you shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, and nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, and you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. When the people saw the thunder and lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance.
Thank you, Judy. So there it is in the Ten Commandments. And it's quite a big chunk within the Ten Commandments. If you were following along on your phone or in a Bible, do you see how big a chunk of the Ten Commandments is devoted to explaining this Sabbath day? It's clearly a big deal. But I'm going to hazard a guess that for you, you choose to regard do not murder as higher priority than keeping Sabbath. Am I guessing right? But it's there. It's in those Ten Commandments. Now, here's the thing, though, because those of you who know your theology and stuff will say, yeah, but hang on. That's in the Old Testament. That's the Old Testament law. And we are not under law. Jesus died to set us free. We don't have to keep the law to earn God's favor because we live by the Spirit, led by Christ through his resurrection. And yeah, you're right. We're not under law. We don't have to keep God's law to earn his favor, to be declared righteous. But the law is still truth. If you looked at any others of those Ten Commandments, they're the fundamental truths of how God designed the world to work, aren't they? And so, yes, it's not a law that you have to follow, but it's still truth. And I love I've tweaked it slightly, but the analogy that they give in the Practicing the Way resources is to think of some of the laws of science. They went for the law of thermodynamics, haven't got the foggiest what that is, so we're going for gravity instead. Do we all know what gravity is? Okay. The law of gravity. Is it a law that you have to make sure you follow? It just is. It just is. It's just how the world functions. You can try and resist it. You can make an aeroplane to fly or a hot air balloon, but ultimately at some point you're going to come back down to ground. Yeah? It just is. And in the same way, I would suggest to you that this model of Sabbath that God gives us, of working for 6 days and then a seventh day being a Sabbath, it just is. It's part of the structure of how we as people are designed to work, like the law of gravity. So, what do we do with Sabbath? What is Sabbath? How do we practice it? And I get very excited when we start talking about Sabbath because it's such a rich thing. We could spend hours this morning tracing through all the Bible about what it teaches about Sabbath and the rich depths of meaning about it. There is so much. But you'll be pleased to know I'm going to restrain myself this morning. You will be home in time for lunch. Because I'm just going to focus in on 2 aspects of it this morning, which is stopping and resting. And then next week, you're going to have the joy of Helen over here is going to carry on, and she's going to focus on a couple of other aspects of Sabbath. So there's so much, but we're focusing in on these 2. So let's go back to that passage then. When God gives the people of Israel their 10 commandments, the founding laws of this is how life is supposed to work for you as God's people. He says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. So that principle 1 of the Sabbath, on the Sabbath, everyone stops. They stop from their work. Now, there's something really important to get about this. Think about who these commandments are being delivered to you. Those of you who know the story, who is God giving these commandments to? The Israelites. Where have they just come from? Slavery in Egypt. What is one thing that slaves do not get? A day off. A day off. And so part of the principle of telling them to have this Sabbath is as a declaration that they are no longer slaves. Because I have set you free, God says to them, you will stop for a day. You will have a day when you don't work. All those years in Egypt when the Egyptians ruled over you, they were the ones with the power, and they said, you work every single day. You work harder. You do more. But now that God has set them free, the Egyptians don't rule over them anymore. So this is an act of, you could almost call it defiance, in saying, you know what? No, I am not a slave. I am going to take a day off. I am going to stop because I am no longer a slave. And that's why it puts in there, on it, you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner, because none of them are slaves. No one is a slave. And so they stop on the Sabbath. Okay, so that's them. But what about us? If we think how that applies to us. Because I'm going to hazard a guess that, most of the people in this room are not literal slaves. We probably don't think of ourselves as slaves. There are some husbands and wives looking at each other in very knowing ways right now. But for us, Sabbath is about making it clear we are not slaves. What tries to rule over you? What tries to enslave you? Maybe there are expectations of the world that you easily become enslaved to. Perhaps it's about achievement or recognition at work. The world says you have to achieve the highest position you can. You have to earn the most you can. You have to get the respect of your colleagues by doing more. Does that try to enslave you? Or maybe those of you who are parents, and you're all going, yeah, I'm a slave to my kids. But what the world says, you've got to be the best parent. You've got to make sure that your children have the best equipment, the best experience, the best extracurricular activities. You've got to get them to swimming and flute lessons and dancing and karate, and they've got to have an extra language lesson on the side. And you've got to make sure as well that you're giving them the best nutrition, so everything must be prepared from scratch and it must all be organic. And yeah, can you relate? Does that try to enslave us? So many things. The lifestyle that you're expected to have. Social media and what that portrays to us about, hey, this is what you should be trying to make your life look like. So many things that try to enslave us. I think, you can imagine the crazy picture of, in trying to achieve this lifestyle, you want the perfect, comfiest sofa to rest on, and so you work overtime to be able to afford the really gorgeous sofa, but you never actually get to sit and rest on it because you're so busy doing all the overtime. This is what the world tries to enslave us to. And so for us, Sabbath is about one day a week, because yeah, we have to work. Yeah, we do need to do our best for our kids. Yeah, we do want to achieve things in life, but the Sabbath is one day a week about saying, no, I am not a slave. I am not a slave. God has set me free, and I will not be a slave. And we need to be aware as we think about that, if we're doing that, it's an act of resistance, isn't it? It's a battle. That means we've got to be prepared to fight. It doesn't come easy. How many of you know that you can decide, yeah, I'm going to take that day off, but then, well, maybe just, or could you just? Well, actually, I still need to. We have to fight for it. We have to fight for it because it is a battle. So it's an act of resistance saying, I am not a slave. For Israel, it was that Egypt does not rule over me. For us, we say, the world does not rule over me. But now God does. I belong to him. And that brings us to the second aspect of Sabbath, rest. Let's look at the rest of what it said in Exodus with this commandment. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. God rested on day 7. He'd done all that work of creation, making the world from scratch. He made light. He made the stars and the sun and the world, and he made the people. And frankly, that must have been exhausting. And so I think on day 7, God woke up and went, got a bit of migraine coming on because I've been overdoing it. I think I need to go and lie down. Or, I'm a bit stressed out from all this work of creating. And, I'm getting a bit tetchy today, so I think I'd better take a break just to get myself back on an even keel. Yes? No. Was God tired? Was God stressed out? Was God getting a bit weary and tetchy, and so he needed to take a break just to, get himself? No, he's God. He wasn't tired. He wasn't stressed out. So why did he rest? Why did he rest on day 7? Because his work was complete. His work was complete. He'd spent those 6 days. If you were to look back in the book of Genesis at that creation story, it talks you through those 6 days of creation. At the end of every day, it says, he made this, 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 this. It was good. And then on the next day, he made this, 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 and this, and it was good. And the next day, he made this, and it was good. And then on day 6, he makes us. And he says something different at the end. He says it's very good. And his work of creation is complete. It is all exactly as it should be. Beautiful creation in relationship with God, all as it should be. It is complete. That's why he rested. Now, we could trace through. We're going to fast forward now to the New Testament. If you trace through the whole of Scripture, and I could spend ages justifying this to you with verses all the way through, ask me about them afterwards if you fancy a really long Bible lesson. But basically, what the rest of Scripture teaches us as we come towards the New Testament is that Sabbath, this principle of Sabbath, is what they call a foreshadowing of Jesus. And what we see happening with Jesus, because we know, yes, on day 7 of creation, everything was complete. It was as it should be, in perfect relationship with God. But then Adam and Eve messed up, and it was no longer complete. It was no longer as it should be. But when Jesus came, and he lived that perfect life, and he died as the payment for all of our incompleteness, and he rose again and brought us into life with him and declared us righteous, not through our efforts, but through what he did, that made us complete again. We have been brought back by Jesus through his work to that very good of day 7 of creation, where it is complete. It is well with my soul. I am right with God. And so we rest on the Sabbath, not because we're tired, although we probably are, because God's wired us that way, but we are able to rest on Sabbath because we are complete in God. Sabbath is about us saying, Jesus has done it all. As he said on the cross, just as he died, it is finished. The work of making us holy, the work of making us acceptable to God is complete. Sabbath is about resting because we know I don't have to prove myself to the world. I don't have to prove myself to God because Jesus has already done that for me. And so I am choosing to rest in that, in knowing I am complete. Think of a tiny baby. Anyone else find, so one of my children, bless her, would only sleep when she was being held. She would only sleep when she was being held. She could only rest when she had that security. And that's like us with God. We rest because he's holding us. We've been fed, we've been changed, we've been burped. It's all good. And he's holding us. And so we can rest knowing he's got it. He's taking care of it. In Sabbath, we stop as an act of resistance to say, I am not a slave. And we rest because we know we are completing God. But it's a battle. Because I know that many of you, like me, when it comes saying, okay, I'm going to take Sabbath, I am going to rest today, and we'll go, yeah, but I just need to. You are not a slave. God's got it. You don't just need to. You can trust that he's got it. I'm going to take a Sabbath, but you know what? I'm not actually tired, so maybe I'll just. God wasn't tired either. But you are affirming that his work is enough. It is complete. You choose to stop and rest. Well, I would take a Sabbath, but I'm a high achiever. I'm a high energy person, so I'm one of those people who just keeps going. I think you'll find God was one of them too. But he stopped. He rested. Sabbath is about letting God be God. You know, for me, we think about stopping our paid work. And for me, I actually try and take Saturday as a Sabbath because being a pastor, I'm working right now. This is my paid work. But for me, part of what I have to consciously do on Sabbath is about stopping and remembering that God is God. And so when I think, yeah, but hang on, the Sunday service is coming up, and have I got my sermon just right? And have I sorted? And I just need to message. And for me, it's about remembering, you know what? I am not the one who reigns over this church. God does. It's him that is going to do what he wants to do. So I choose to stop and maybe drop some balls. Because God reigns. God is Lord, not me. And I don't know what it is for you that you need to stop as an act of Sabbath. What is it for you that you need to assert, I am not a slave. I am completing God. What are the things for you? And so as over the next few weeks we're going to think about Sabbath, because there's so much. We had to do more than 1 week on Sabbath. The beginning point for you is to think, what is trying to enslave you? What do you need to make that act of resistance? Say, no, I am not a slave. What do you need to do to grasp that completeness in God, that you can rest in him? So the band are going to come up now and lead us in worship. And maybe as you worship, there's things in that you need to be affirming as we sing. Be open to what he challenges you with, and let's affirm our completeness in him.